David again spares Saul. Now the Ziphites came out of the desert country to Saul at Gibeah, saying, Look! David hides from us at the hill Hachilah, opposite Shimon. Then Saul arose and went down to the desert of Ziph with 3,000 chosen men of Israel, to seek David in the desert of Ziph. And Saul encamped by the road in the hill Hachilah, opposite Shimon. But David stayed in the desert, and he could see that Saul was coming into the desert to pursue him. And David sent out spies and learned Saul came out of Keilah well armed. So David secretly arose and came to the place where Saul lay. Abner the son of Ner, the commander of his army, was there too. Now Saul lay in a covered chariot, and the people encamped round about him. Then David spoke up to Ahimelech the Hittite and to Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab, saying, Who will go with me to Saul in the camp? And Abishai said, I will go with you. So that night, David and Abishai went in among the troops, and there lay Saul asleep in the covered chariot. His spear was jammed into the ground by his head. And Abner and the troops were sleeping all around him. Then Abishai said to David, The Lord places your enemy in your hand this very day. Once and for all, let me strike him with the spear that is in the ground. I will not strike him again. And David said to Abishai, Do not bring him down. For who can bring his own hand against the anointed of the Lord and go unpunished? David said, As the Lord lives, the Lord shall strike him, or his day may come to die, or he may go out to battle and be added to his fathers. The Lord forbid me that I should bring my own hand against the anointed of the Lord. But indeed, take the spear from by his head and the container of water, and let us both go. So David took the spear by Saul's head and the container of water, and they went away. No one noticed or knew what happened or even awoke. All were sleeping, because a deep sleep from the Lord fell upon them. Now David went over to the other side and stood on the top of the mountain afar off. There was a great distance between them. And David called out to the people and spoke to Abner, saying, Do you not answer, Abner? Then Abner answered and said, Who is that calling out to me? So David said to Abner, Are you not a man? And who is like you in Israel? If so, then why do you not guard your lord the king? For one of the people entered your camp to destroy your lord the king. And this thing which you allowed to happen is not good. As the Lord lives, you are sons of death, you guarding the Lord your king, the anointed of the Lord. Now look and tell me, where is the king's spear that was by his head, and the jug of water? Then Saul recognized David's voice and said, Is that truly your voice, my son David? And David said, It is your servant, my lord, O king. And David said, Why is my lord pursuing his servant? How have I sinned? What wrong have you found in me? Now let my lord the king hear his servant's words. If God incites you against me, let him accept the scent of your offering. If the sons of men incite you against me, let these men be cursed before the Lord. For today by their saying, Go, serve other gods, they show their desire to cast me out, in order to prevent me from being established in the inheritance of the Lord. Now do not let my blood fall to the ground before the face of the Lord. For the king of Israel comes here to seek my life, like one who hunts a horned owl in the mountains. Then Saul said, I have sinned. Return, my son David. for I will harm you no more. Because my life was precious in your eyes this day. Indeed, I have played the fool and erred exceedingly. And David answered and said, Behold, the spear of the king. Let one of the servants come over and receive it. And the Lord shall repay each man for his righteousness and his faithfulness, as the Lord delivered you into my hands today, though I did not lift my hand against the Lord's anointed. Indeed, as your life was exalted this day in my eyes, in this same way let my life be exalted before the Lord, and let him shelter and deliver me from every tribulation. Then Saul said to David, May you be blessed, my son. You shall do great things and be mighty. So David went his way, and Saul returned to his place. Notes from the previous page. 25:22-34 John Cassian takes the story of David as an example of how compassion can overtake our own strong determination. David allowed compassion to alter his vengeful oath. 26:12 David again has an opportunity to kill Saul, but he refuses to lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. See note at 24:7, 8. God put the camp into a deep sleep so David could escape unharmed. Saul has one more chance to repent, yet he squanders this opportunity with mere words and no actions. David dwells with the Philistines. David spoke in his heart, saying, Now the day will come when I shall die by the hand of Saul and be added to my fathers. What is best for me is to be in the land of the Philistines where I will be safe, for Saul will stop searching for me at the borders. Then I will be delivered out of his hand. Then David and the 400 men with him arose and traveled to Achish the son of Moch, king of Gath. And David settled in Gath with Achish, he and his men, each with his family, and David with both wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelite woman, and Abigail the widow of Nabal, the Carmelite. And it was reported to Saul that David had fled to Gath, so he no longer sought him. Then David said to Achish, If your servant has now found favor in your eyes, indeed offer to me a place in one of the cities in your country, and I will settle there. Why have your servant settle with you, here in your royal city? And that day Achish gave Ziklag to David. That is why Ziklag still belongs to the king of Judah to this very day. Now the time David dwelt in the country of the Philistines was 4 months. And David and his men went up and attacked all the Geshurites and the Amalekites, indeed even against the tribes belonging to this area, and against the inhabited cities of Galampshur, from the fortified cities as far as the land of Egypt. And he struck the land, and neither man nor woman was left alive. He took away the sheep, the cattle, the donkeys, the camels, and the clothing, and came back to Achish. Then Achish said to David, Where did you attack today? And David said to Achish, Upon the south of Judah, upon the south of the Jezmgah, and on the south of the Kenites. And David did not leave man or woman alive to bring news to Gath, saying, Let them not inform on us to those in Gath by saying, Thus David did. This was David's behavior as long as he dwelt in the country of the Philistines. So David had the full confidence of Achish, who said, David is now thoroughly abhorred by his own people for having put Israel to shame, he will be my servant forever. Now in those days, the Philistines gathered their armies together to battle with Israel. And Achish said to David, Know for sure, you shall enter into battle with me, you and your men. And David said to Achish, "Thus you know what your servant will do." And Achish said to David, "Therefore I will make you one of my chief guardians forever." Saul consults a medium. Now it happened that Samuel had died, and all Israel lamented for him and buried him in Ramah, his own city. And Saul expelled those with divining spirits and the wizards out of the land. Then the Philistines came together and encamped at Shunem. So Saul collected all the men of Israel together and encamped at Gilboa. When Saul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart was near panic. For when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him by dreams, nor by clear signs, nor by the prophets. Then Saul said to his servants, "Seek for me a woman with a divining spirit, I will go to her and inquire of her." And his servants said to him, "In fact, there is a woman who is a medium at Endor." So Saul disguised himself and put on other clothing. He then went out, taking 2 men with him, and by night they came to the woman. And he said to her, "Indeed, by the divining spirit, tell the future to me when you bring up to me whom I tell you." Then the woman said to him, "Look, you know what Saul did, and how he cut off the diviners and the wizards from the land. Why do you lay a snare for my life, to cause me to be put to death?" And Saul swore to her, saying, "As the Lord lives, no injustice shall come upon you for this action." Then the woman said, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" And he said, "Bring up Samuel for me." When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. And the woman spoke to Saul, saying, "Why did you deceive me? You are Saul." But the king said to her, "Do not be afraid. What did you see?" And the woman said to him, "I saw gods ascending out of the earth." So he said to her, "What did you perceive?" And she said, "A man is coming up, standing upright, and he is covered with a mantle." And Saul discerned it to be Samuel, and he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed down to him. Now Samuel said to Saul, "Why did you trouble me by bringing me up?" And Saul answered, "I am deeply distressed. The Philistines are making war against me, and God has departed from me and does not answer me any more, neither by the hand of prophets nor by dreams. Therefore I summoned you to tell me what I should do." Then Samuel said, "Why do you ask me, when the Lord has departed from you and is with your enemy? And as the Lord spoke to you by my hand, he has done. For the Lord will rend the kingdom out of your hand and will give it to your neighbor, David. For you did not heed the voice of the Lord nor execute his fierce wrath upon Amalek. This is why the Lord has done this to you today. And the Lord shall deliver Israel, including you, into the hand of the Philistines. Tomorrow you and your sons with you shall fall. The Lord will deliver the army of Israel into the hand of the Philistines." Saul fell prostrate on the ground, for he was very afraid because of Samuel's words. He was also weak since he had not eaten any food all that day and night. Then the woman came to Saul and saw his weakened condition. So she said to him, "Behold, when your handmaiden heard the sound of your voice, I put my life at risk and I obeyed the words you spoke to me. Now hear the voice of your handmaiden, and let me set a piece of bread before you. Eat and you will have strength when you go on your way." But he refused to eat. So his servants, together with the woman, urged him, and he heeded their voice. He then arose from the ground and sat on the chariot bench. Now the woman had a heifer roaming the pasture, and she hastened and killed it. Then she took flour and kneaded it, and from it she baked unleavened bread. And she brought it before Saul and his servants. They ate and departed that night. Notes from the previous page. 27:1 David's statements display his conviction that Saul will not repent, regardless of his remorseful posturing. 27:8-12 Although David was living in exile among the Philistines, he still defended and expanded the borders of his native land. Despite his circumstances, he never forgot his calling to uphold and protect the people of God, and he did not let outward events thwart this mission. 28:7-25 This passage created great controversy among the fathers of the church. In fact, at least three distinct interpretations can be found. 1. The woman called Samuel forth from the dead, Justin Martyr, Origen, Ambrose, and Augustine. 2. Whether it was Samuel or a demon, it appeared at God's bidding and not by some magic of the woman, Chrysostom, Theodoret. 3. The entity was a demon who deceived Saul and gave him a false prophecy, Tertullian. Hippolytus, Ephraim the Syrian, Evagrius, Basil, Jerome, Ambrosius Dur, and Gregory of Nyssa. The third interpretation seems to be held by the greatest number of fathers, and Gregory of Nyssa wrote a specific treatise on the subject. He defends this view by citing the impassable chasm in the Lazarus parable, LK 16:26. The apparition appeared only to the woman, she told Saul whom it resembled. The Greek word translated medium in this passage is literally the word for ventriloquist. Also, Saul had been plagued by evil spirits for years and was easily deceived by them.